Thank you for coming to this session. I hope you are having a good time attending different sessions. I'm sure you guys must be drinking from the fire hose. I was looking at all the other sessions. I see a lot of like TensorFlow, reinforcement learning, auto ML, and so on. So a lot of like deep technical stuff. So my session is going to be slightly different in the sense that I will try to bring more the business use case side. So that's what I'm going to focus on, share with you how we are applying chatbot technologies for business use cases and what we have learned along the way around how we put together a framework to guide our continued investment in chatbots, because chatbot is not one and done. As you may all know, chatbot is something where you need to have a strategy, a roadmap, and it will require continuous investment. So I will present to you some of the insight that we have come up with around what the framework looks like. So before I get started, I just wanted to get a poll from you guys. How many of you, if I can see show of hands, how many of you are currently seeing either in-flight or planned chatbot initiative in your organization? Okay, I think it's about 2/3, plus minus. So that's great. So chatbot, it has been a very hot topic, and it is gaining more and more momentum, as we kind of move along. So before I start, a little bit about myself. I am in the business of applying technology for business use cases. So in my current role as the Director of Enterprise Architecture with Blue Shield of California, my team is responsible for developing the technology strategy and implementation roadmaps to guide our business transformation and innovation initiatives. We are going through a lot of transformation. I also teach a applied data science program with the UC Davis. And the last fun fact is, and that's I really enjoy doing, I teach small kids about technology to generate some excitement in them. And kids always get excited when you tell them how Alexa works, because they think somebody is inside the Alexa device and all that. So when you unpack things for them, you can see light in their eyes. So that's a little bit about me. I work for Blue Shield of California, as I mentioned. So Blue Shield of California is in the business of healthcare. We are one of the largest health plans in California. We have been around, as you can see, for a while. We sell different types of health plan products. We have health insurance, medical plans. We have dental plans, vision plans. We are in Medicaid and Medicare business as well. We are a mission-driven organization, and our mission has been to provide quality healthcare to all Californians at an affordable price. So that's what we strive to. And in line with that mission, we also have a 2% pledge, which means that we cap our income at 2%, and anything beyond that goes back into the community in different ways. Healthcare industry, as many of you might know, is going through quite a bit of transformation for a variety of reasons. There are external forces that are acting on this industry. There is a lot of consumerization, and healthcare in general is becoming more a retail market, from B2B, where employees will buy insurance for their employees. Now, a lot of people are making their own purchase decisions, and that kind of changes the dynamics. So we are trying to be the leader in a lot of that transformation, and obviously technology is a big part of how we drive the transformation, and we make healthcare more value-based. So this is the structure of what I'm going to talk about. So I will start with what is a chatbot, just to put some working definitions and some concepts behind it. I know most of you know what chatbot is, but just to kind of give everybody a common ground. So we'll start with what is a chatbot, and then I'll talk a little bit about why do you need a chatbot. And this is pretty obvious. I mean, I saw a lot of hands, which means you already have a business case, you already have initiatives. That means there are drivers why you are investing in chatbot. But I'll try to summarize it. And then the last part is where I want to spend a little bit of time on how do you go about your chatbot journey. So chatbot journey is a multi-year journey for most of the organizations like ours, and in other industries as well. And this is a new area, new technology, and there are new use cases that companies are experimenting with. They are learning, and then they're iterating on it, and so on. So there is quite a bit of experiment aspect to it, but there is also a little bit of strategic aspect, and that's what I would try to highlight in the framework as you go about planning your chatbot initiatives and multi-year investment plan. Then what are key considerations that you want to take into account? So what is a chatbot? So here is a working definition that I use. A chatbot is a cognitive solution that uses voice and natural language as user inputs and is powered by machine learning models. Very simple and intuitive definition. And there are multiple flavors of chatbot. Some are consumer-facing, some are customer-facing, some are employee-facing. But there are a lot of things in common across all of these chatbots that they all provide more intuitive natural language interface to their end users. I would build on that definition a little bit more, that a chatbot can be deployed in multiple conversation channels. And these conversational channels may range from a smart speaker. I'm sure that many of you will have Amazon Echo device in your home, or Google Home, or Apple HomePod, and so on. So that's an example of a smart speaker. But you have other channels as well, like the mobile device. There are messaging platforms such as Facebook Messenger. There is Slack, and there are other type of channels. You may have your own web presence, for instance, where you want to kind of deploy. So we consider conversational channels as another key component of a chatbot. Chatbot is not building something channel specific just for Alexa or just for one specific channel. It should be a little bit broader than that. And then the last one is a chatbot uses an application programming interface. And this is where rubber meets the road. So if you are building a chatbot for real business use cases, you need to wire it to your core systems. That's where the data is. Otherwise, your chatbot is not going to do anything very useful. I mean, you can have a little bit of information sort of embedded, but if you are not wiring your chatbot through the APIs to your backend for the core business data and the application services, it would not go too far in terms of its utility to the end users. So hope this kind of makes sense to use some of the basic definition. So I want to use a couple of examples. So depending on the business use case, there are multiple technology options that should be considered. And there are a couple of examples. So for instance, we recently launched an Alexa skill, and it is more related to product awareness. So users can ask, health insurance products tend to be a little bit more complicated. Folks don't know what's the difference between HMO and PPO. Sometimes they get confused between the FSA, HSA, how the deductible works, and so on. So on one of the spectrum, you may have a use case that requires you to custom build a chatbot. And in that case, you will use a technology platform that gives you the building blocks that you put together to build that chatbot. So one example would be Microsoft has a bot service along with a set of AI services that they offer. So you can use that bot framework as your starting point, that SDK, to build your custom chatbot. If you go a little bit further, based on your specific business use case, if there is already something available on the market, then that's something you might want to consider. So one example here is the Babylon Health. So this is a company out of UK, but they are making inroads in US as well. And there are other companies as well. I mean, these are just illustrative examples. So this chatbot, essentially what it does, it allows users this experience where they can start chatting with this chatbot, that I'm having a headache, and then chatbot will ask questions, and through that interaction, there will be some triaging happening. And that triaging is based on the clinical triaging protocol. And that triaging will essentially guide the user to, nothing to worry about. Here are some recommendations for self-remedy, or If it turns out that they are having some symptoms which may indicate something serious, then you go and see a doctor. And to take it further, some of these chatbots are having a warm handoff where you can get connected with the doctor right away for the video chat or for a phone call and so on. Another example is the transcription. So a lot of doctors, for instance, today, they are burned out because they have to do a lot of data entry into their EMR system. And this is a pretty universal fact that doctors are feeling so much of pain. Earlier, it was all paper-based, but now with the EMR adoption that happened in early part of 2000, now they have to do so much of data entry that they hardly have time to talk to the patient, and a lot of times they're working off hours to get all that data in. So there are technologies and chatbots emerging where you have an Alexa type experience where doctor is having a conversation with the patient, and then this chatbot is kind of listening in, then it kind of parses the conversation, kind of tease out medically significant phrases, applies a lot of natural language understanding, and gets that data into the EMR system. So it's not quite there yet, but there is a lot of momentum along those type of chatbots as well. Then there is an interesting chatbot. Many of you may have heard about this, vochat.io. So this chatbot is related to mental health. So the use case is that the user will interact with this chatbot, and the chatbot will ask them how they're feeling, what their mood is, and it will ask a few more questions, and then through that process, the chatbot will provide what they call cognitive behavioral therapy. And the thing that is unique about this chatbot is that it uses a very different type of brains behind it. So this chatbot is more futuristic, and this uses what is called generative deep learning model behind it, versus other chatbots which are more rule-based. So you still have to kind of map out the dialogue flow where, based on what is said, you tease out the intent, and then you have some mapping from intent to the action. So that's all like rule-based. That's where 95% of the action is in terms of the business use case adoption. But if we fast forward into the future, we might start seeing where you don't have to map all of that. The chatbot will become smarter based on these generative deep learning models behind them to sort of come up with its own responses. We are not there yet, but there is a lot of development happening here. So the whole point is that you try to understand what your use case is and where that use case might land on this spectrum. You might end up building custom chatbot because there isn't anything available on the market. There may be a use case for which there is something available. You want to use that as a starting point and kind of build on it. So to take it further, this is the conceptual architecture model for building multi-channel chatbot. So within this architecture model, and I say it's quite vendor agnostic by design, just to kind of get you thinking in a little bit more abstract way, what are different pieces that make up this whole architecture. So the middle part is where the chatbot solution, that is the heart of the chatbot. So within this architecture layer, you have some type of a bot framework services. So in case of Microsoft, for example, you have Microsoft bot services that you can leverage to collect the input as natural language, parse it, apply NLU on it, apply the dialog flow, extract entities, intents, and then map it to the actions. Then there are also a set of AI services that get plugged into your chatbot. So natural language processing and natural language understanding are there by design because chatbot is conversing with the end users using those natural language expressions. But you can take it further. You can have a speech, a tone analyzer, for instance. So there are interesting use cases within contact center where you have some kind of, not exactly a chatbot, but this tone analyzer sort of running and kind of hearing how the customer is expressing themselves, are they angry and whatnot, and then you can do interesting things based on that. You can actually plug that tone analyzer in your chatbot also. It can be used in text mode as well. Sometimes the way people phrase, you can kind of sense if they're happy, unhappy, and so on. There are recommendation engines that can be plugged into the chatbot. There are visual recognition, retrieve rank, and custom ML models. So this is where there will be a lot of cases where you might need to develop your own predictive model and then plug that predictive model into the chatbot through API. So this predictive model could be, for instance, you have a customer-facing chatbot, and based on a lot of interaction and based on history of that customer, you want to predict what the next best action should be. So that's an example where you can not only use the services that are offered from these technology platforms, but you also build your own predictive models and you plug those predictive models into your chatbot solution. So once you have the brain of the chatbot, then you can make that chatbot available in any of these conversation channels. So a smart speaker like Alexa, for instance, mobile device, messaging platform, SMS, web, and so on. There is a caveat I want to highlight that when you deploy your chatbot to some of these devices, there is a little bit of device-specific development you have to do. For instance, Alexa has its whole Alexa skills platform. So there is some device-specific development you do, but you try to keep the backend as reusable as possible so that you can make that chatbot available to multiple conversation channels. If we look down, there are APIs. So this is where rubber meets the road. You have a chatbot, and chatbot is being layered on top of your core data and core services. So very common and widely adopted pattern is having an API gateway. So API gateway is sort of your point through which you make all the APIs available. You apply security through it. You apply other type of consumption policies. You can do throttling. There are a lot of interesting things you can do. And behind the API gateway, you have set of services and APIs that serve up the data. On the back end, obviously, you have your core data sources. These could be your transactional systems or your derived systems and so on. So the whole point of this architecture is that when you define chatbot, you want to think kind of broadly that chatbot is not just like a channel-specific point solution, but chatbot is something which will have this little bit of like ecosystem around it, where it will be exposed through multiple channels, and it will use the core services and the data that you have. So why you need a chatbot? So I just wanted to highlight a couple of external drivers. So as we all know, technology trends are indicating significant growth in this space. And these are some points from Gartner top 10 strategic technology trending. By 2022, they are predicting that 30% of the customer service experiences will be delivered through some kind of a conversational agents. So, I mean, that's a pretty high number if you think, like almost 1/3. And some of this probably will be shifted from your call center traffic. Some of this may shift, from other channels, but it's a pretty, significant number. By 2019, 40% of enterprises will be actively using chatbots to facilitate business processes using NLP. This is pretty interesting because a lot of times when you hear press about chatbots, it's mostly around customer-facing, customer engagement, and customer experience. But chatbot is making silent inroads into enterprise business processes space. So what has happened in that space, as you may know, a lot of like ERPs and other core systems that may be driving your business, they don't tend to have very user-friendly interface. I mean, a lot of ERPs still have like clunky interface, and you have to click through 20 screens to do one thing. So now, what is happening, there are enterprise bots that are being developed either by these ERP vendors, where they make their interface available as a natural interface. So you just talk to it if you want to do something, whether it's in HR or finance. So that's a big shift happening. Another example is, help desk, for instance. So ServiceNow company, so they have an interface. You can go and create like service requests and so on. But now they have a chatbot framework. So you can just talk and you can create your service ticket through that conversation. So it's a pretty interesting area, the whole enterprise bots. And by 2018, which is this year, 2 billion people. So, I mean, we all get it. So taking it a little bit further, so why now? So the growth in voice interfaces. So there is a pretty interesting shift that has happened in last year and a half, like late 2016 and 17, which was that the NLP and NLU, it surpassed the accuracy level of a human being, which was like 95%. So earlier it was sort of like in 80s and slowly crept up to like 90s, but now it is better than human accuracy. And that has opened the floodgates. And through that evolution, what is happening, this whole game is changing. So the whole user interface, I mean, we have come a long way from command line interfaces, right, where you had to kind of type those keywords and commands very specific, and then graphical user interface. But now it is the computers who are adapting to us. We can talk to them just like we talk to other human beings. They can now hear through natural language processing. They have started seeing. So there is a lot of like computer vision. And of course, there is a lot of gesture, right? So they can see our motions and whatnot. So it's a quite interesting shift that is happening. And on the right side, this is a recent data point I got from Klein Perkinson. So you see that hockey stick growth. This is Amazon, but I think it's reflective of this whole phenomena where voice interfaces are really becoming a key part of how experience is exposed. So from internal drivers' perspective, there are common business use cases in our company, and I'm sure this will resonate with many of you. So if you take your common business use cases, they tend to fall in two major buckets. You have customer experience related business use cases, and you have employee experience related use cases. And obviously for both of these use cases, your key business benefits are you are enhancing the customer experience. So customers don't have to click through multiple screens, or employees don't have to click through 10 screens in their HR system to do stuff. And through that process, you can also reduce the operational cost. So a couple of examples from customer service perspective. Marketing is interesting. So that's where I mentioned we launched a product awareness related chatbot, and we'll go further. So customer service, in our case, like benefit inquiry, we get a lot of calls asking for benefit information. I mean, it's pretty complicated. In network, out of network, deductible, and stuff like that. Claims inquiry. And then you can take it further. You can have other transaction-related use cases that you can build through the chatbot. The employee experience, I kind of touched on it, enterprise business processes. So this is another category of use cases. So IT support, I mean, as simple as having like a password reset. Today it takes quite a bit of cycles to get your password reset. But now you can have a chatbot. You just talk to the chatbot, and you're done in 30 seconds or less. So I'm sure that most of you, since I saw a show of hands, you already have a business case, and you are on this path. So we talked about what is a chatbot, a little bit of a broader definition and some of the characteristics. We also talked about why you need one, because of the external drivers, and then you have your own business use cases that you want to enable for all the business benefits. Now let's take it a little bit further. How do you go about your chatbot journey? So I wanted to share a framework that we have developed along the way in our own experience and through some of the best practices. So the strategic and sustained investment in chatbot initiatives requires a framework, and that framework has three core components to it. The first one is the product strategy. The product strategy is where you want to, very traditional, like just like a startup, you have some idea and you want to kind of conceptualize that. So what is the product concept or concepts? Because you're not going to have defined that just once. You will have a series of concepts based on different use cases. Then what is the high-level product roadmap that you kind of see? And then the last part is, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, alignment across LOBs. So customer-facing chatbots in particular, you don't want to have them scattered all over the place because all that interaction will get pretty disjointed from customer perspective. So you want to think about that, how you do that alignment across lines of businesses. Then architecture strategy is about the technology platform that is required to support your use cases, and what's the technical architecture, what's the implementation roadmap. And then people strategy, talent development, team model, and vendor relationship. So I'll talk about these a little bit more in subsequent slides. So let's start with the product strategy. So what are the key considerations from product strategy perspective? So the first one I want to call out is that your chatbot product strategy should not be a disconnected, standalone strategy. It needs to be part of your larger omni-channel strategy or digital customer experiences strategy, whatever you call it. So there must be some strategy in your organization as part of your digital transformation. So make sure that your chatbot strategy is tied to that. And it's very important because you are introducing a channel through chatbot, and you want to make sure that channel is in harmony when you look at the overall customer journey. Because customers will be spanning these different channels as they complete something. So you want to understand the customer journey, including contact center. And it is becoming very painfully clear that you don't want to launch a customer-facing chatbot and not have a warm handoff to a real agent if there is a need. I mean, there are chatbots that companies have launched, and they put you in this infinite loop. You just can't get out of it. So you want to think about that your chatbot is essentially your extension to omnichannel, and there will be an exit point where chatbot cannot handle what user is intending to do. And now you do a warm handoff to the real CSR, and you do a warm handoff in the sense that all of that contextual information is passed on to them. And there are like technical considerations that you have to look at because agents, they work off of the queues, and these queues may be, these queues are becoming like universal queues where they may be getting things from chatbot, email, and calls, and so on. So you need to integrate all of that. Coordinate chatbot initiatives across different lines of businesses to avoid siloed design and disjointed experience. So there are different business functions in any organization. You have marketing, you have customer service, in our case, we have care management and so on. And there is a lot of need of, we have this use case, we want to do a chatbot. We have this use case, we want to build a chatbot for that. So you need to bring it all together. And if you are set up organizationally with that type of structure where you have a business lead who is overseeing digital customer experience, that would be the right place for them to kind of take all these use cases and conceptualize them in a holistic way. Apply product management discipline and plan for concept, design, test, and launch iterations. So this is not something you want to build like one project at a time. I mean, you need to have the whole project management mindset behind it. And taking it further, you want to apply these lean startup methods where try with the MVP and kind of launch that and learn from it. Because at the end of the day, whenever you are launching a chatbot, there are some hypotheses that you have. You may have done customer research, focus group, and maybe some design workshops with them to understand the customer journeys. So that is all useful information, but at the end of the day, that is still a set of hypotheses. So you want to test those hypotheses, value and growth hypotheses through your iterations. So take experiment-based test and learn approach. So from architecture strategy perspective, there is always build versus buy options, and they will continue to be one of the biggest considerations for you because the vendor landscape is evolving highly. So depending on your business use case, if you have a business use case for which there is already a solution, then you want to consider that with the understanding that you might need to integrate that to some extent with your omni-channel application footprint. You don't want to have all these disjointed customer-facing chatbots and channel applications. If you're doing a custom build, I mentioned there are technology platforms. Microsoft has one, IBM has one, Google has one, Amazon has one. So all of these vendors, they give you these building blocks. So they give you bot services. You don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. They do NLU and NLP for you, which is great. It is pretty accurate, 97, 98%. Then you also get a lot of AI services, which are very easy to plug in. They're all like APIs. So consider those things if you have to kind of build your custom chatbot. Then integrate chatbot architecture with the omni-channel architecture strategy. So as I mentioned, if you are building a chatbot, think how that will integrate with your contact center architecture. I mean, you will have some footprint. You have like IVRs, you have the type of maybe investment. So think about how it's going to all come together. Invest in APIs and microservices-based architecture for integration. So you cannot go wrong with this. So your investment in this will pay off in multiple dimensions. So that's true in a lot of ways. Invest in data architecture for building data foundation. So this is oftentimes a slightly neglected part because you don't see the data behind the scene. I mean, everybody sees the front end of the chatbot. But you need to invest in your data architecture to build the foundation. So one common example is building this customer 360, building profile and preference, because customers have preferences, and historically companies have built a lot of like siloed applications where those preferences were sort of distributed. So you need to bring it all together. Personalization. You cannot do personalization if you don't have the data that kind of gives you the unified view of the customer. And personalization becomes very critical for your chatbot, especially customer-facing chatbots. I mean, data quality, governance, and other key requirements, I mean, those exist as always. So from people strategy perspective, there are key considerations. So implementation of chatbot initiatives is a team sport, and it requires close partnership between business and IT during these iterations as you go from product concept to product launch and everything in between. And I kind of use the IT and business kind of loosely. I mean, this does include other players. You have data scientists, you have data pipeline builders, and a lot of those roles. And also recognize and plan for the skill set that is required to build these chatbots. So a lot of times it's not intuitive. I mean, you may start your journey, but we also learned that there are a lot of unique skill sets that you need to bring together. So chatbot design, I mean, this whole voice interface design is a relatively newer area. I mean, there is a lot of like UX best practices that have been put together. But how you design these voice interfaces, I mean, that is still an art and it's kind of evolving. And that's where you also want to maybe some talent around design thinking to create these user-centered designs, something that users will find useful. Obviously, you want to track that when you launch, through the analytics on the back end and so on. Then development of these chatbots. You don't develop these chatbots in some of the traditional programming languages. I mean, if you're developing, let's say on Microsoft platform, there is a lot of like Node.js, C# code you have to write. You need to understand like JSON. You need to understand, other like dialogue mapping and so on. APIs, microservices, data engineering, and data science. So if you are plugging in your own predictive models in the chatbot, think about the data pipeline which will give you the data set that will be used in creating those predictive models by data scientists. So kind of think broadly. So that's where data engineering and data science also comes into play. So the last one is a little bit nuanced. I mean, every company may have their own strategy around the talent management. But what we have found that it's best to have a blended talent management strategy where you have some in-house talent that is developed, and you really need that in-house talent in order to have that sustained delivery and support model behind your chatbot initiatives. And then you bring in these vendor partnerships and professional services as needed in some specific areas where you may have gap, whether these are like short-term things with some kind of roadmap that you may have, that you will grow that skill set and make that team more self-sufficient and so on. So something to think about. Oftentimes this whole people strategy is kind of neglected, but what we have found that you have to sort of think along these lines as part of this overall strategy. So just to summarize, strategic and sustained investment in chatbot initiatives require focus in these three areas: product strategy, architecture strategy, and people strategy. Product strategy, you are essentially designing this product concept with some kind of a market need, with some need in mind, whether this is customer-facing experience or employee-facing experience, and that will you have business case and funding and so on. architecture strategy revolves a lot of around what technology you use to build these and what the roadmap looks like, and the people strategy. So having said that, I mean, this framework is not telling you that you have to go and do all of that at once. So you still need to have that mindset that you are thinking strategically and you are acting tactically. But the framework at least give you a plan, a roadmap, and then you can actually translate that roadmap, especially for people who request like funding and whatnot. I mean, every company has their budgeting cycles and so on. So when you are kind of thinking holistically, this can inform your thinking that I need to go and invest in this, and you can be more proactive about building that capability in order to have a sustained model for your chatbot development. So with that, I want to say thank you all for listening, and we have a few minutes, if anybody, or 2 minutes, if anybody has any questions that I can answer. Please. So that's both. It's a combination. And you will find that, so like triaging, for example, we are looking at triaging. So triaging is not something that you want to build. I mean, there are vendor solutions out there that are doing this very well. So you want to take that, and you still need to do some integration. And in some cases, you can take their application, you can embed that experience in your own mobile application to make it more unified from customer perspective. And sometimes you have to go and build your own.
Have you gone live with any of those?
So we are live with Amazon Alexa, and we have a roadmap for other things. And a couple of use cases that I mentioned along the way: benefit inquiry, claims inquiry. I mean, there are many things that we are kind of thinking through. Triaging is another one.
Anyone else have a question they'd like to ask publicly? If not, then let's end this session. The next session is starting at 4 o'clock. It's a kind of a break now. I'm sure Sharad would entertain any private questions you care to put forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.